My boyfriend told his side piece I was exhausting, so I showed him what exhausting really looked like. I've always dated guys who couldn't keep up with me, literally. So when Jake approached me at the gym, all 6'2" of him in compression gear, talking about his morning 10Ks and weekend warrior lifestyle, I actually felt my heart skip. Finally, someone who'd understand why I set 6 alarms for sunrise runs, who wouldn't judge my freezer full of meal prep, who could maybe even join me on the trails. Spoiler alert, those abs were purely decorative. It started small. I'd invite him on morning runs and he'd say his knee hurt. I'd suggest hiking, but he'd claim he needed to recover from the gym he went to twice a month maximum. By month 3, he'd stopped pretending entirely. I'd lace up my trail runners and he'd pat my ass and say, "Have fun playing mountain goat, babe." Then he started making it personal. When I meal prepped on Sundays, he'd order pizza and wave it in my face. "Life's too short to eat sad chicken," he'd say with grease on his chin. And when I signed up for my first ultramarathon, he laughed and said, "You know, that's not normal, right?" Like, psychologically. The worst part is he'd brag to his friends about dating a fitness chick while telling me I was a little obsessed. He'd show them my race photos, but roll his eyes when I talked about training. He even started calling me Energizer Bunny. And that voice, you know, the one, the kind that makes the nickname feel like an insult. But I could handle the mockery. What I couldn't handle was the lying. 3 months ago, I was halfway up a mountain when my friend Sarah texted, "Isn't that Jake at Brendan's bar?" I'd specifically asked him to come with me that morning, but he'd said his back hurt and needed to rest for the big game later. Sarah sent a photo of Jake, his ex-girlfriend Emma, and her yoga instructor friends doing shots. They looked cozy. Too cozy. I called him right there at 13,000 feet furious, just with the boys. He said, "Can't hear you. Bad connection." Click. That night I came home wind-burned and suspicious. He was already in bed, phone face down on the nightstand. Red flag number 1. I did something I'd never done. I looked. The password was still his birthday, the idiot. Hidden in some messaging app I'd never heard of. Months of texts with Emma, workout selfies she'd sent, responses like, "Damn girl, Jake still got it and plans to meet up while I was on my long runs." The kicker, "Your girlfriend's kind of intense. Does she ever just chill?" His response, "Lol, no. It's exhausting. That's why I need you." I sat on the bathroom floor, screenshot after screenshot burning into my brain. He needed her because I was exhausting? Fine. Let me show him what exhausting really looks like. I turned off the bathroom lights, washed my face, and looked in the mirror as if I was facing a version of myself that he had never known. Not the girl in love who prepared lunchboxes with care and woke up at 5 to not miss the sunrise, but the woman who knew exactly where it hurt and what kind of blow would hurt the most. From that moment on, I decided that Jake wouldn't just regret it. He would beg to have back the intense version he used to mock. That dawn, silently, I began to organize everything. I went back to the bedroom, lay down beside him, and watched his rhythmic, serene breathing. Almost childlike. It was ironic how he slept like an angel while hiding a demon in his pocket. The next day, he woke up to the smell of my usual coffee, and I was smiling. Of course I was. I needed him to believe that everything was normal, that I was still the same woman willing to run for him, when in reality I was already running from him. In the days that followed, I intensified my routine like never before. I started training twice as much, signed up for races he didn't even know existed, began recording videos about healthy lifestyle, and quickly started gaining followers on Instagram. I kept growing, attracting attention, including from some mutual acquaintances. Even the gym owner, the one Jake always said was a pumped-up jerk, started liking and commenting on my posts. And I allowed it. I wanted Jake to see, and mainly, to feel. But I went further. In the 3rd week, I discovered that Emma worked as an instructor at a chain of yoga studios in the city. I went there, took a trial class with her, pretended I had never seen her face in my life, and complimented her posture. Her lightness, her energy. She smiled, flattered. At the end of class, she gave me a flyer about a workshop she would be teaching soon, and I confirmed my attendance with the fakest enthusiasm I had ever displayed. I was good at hiding disgust. Very good. Meanwhile, at home, I continued being the understanding girlfriend. I prepared light dinners, smiled during movies, asked how the game had been, and he, of course, believed he had broken me, that his betrayals had been hidden in the depths of some digital closet, and that I, the Energizer Bunny, had gone back to being just another domesticated girl. Idiot. The first blow came subtly. I took Jake to a launch party for a new fitness clothing line by a local influencer. I said I won tickets through a raffle, which wasn't a lie, but I had sent a message to the organizer asking to participate. and he loved the idea of promoting female diversity in the endurance race we would do. In the middle of the party, everyone was taking photos, and of course, I knew Emma would be there too. When she appeared, she saw us together and froze. I greeted her with a smile and said, "Jake, honey, this is Emma, remember? The one who called you decorative after the breakup?" She widened her eyes. Jake coughed. I pretended not to see. But that was just the opening. The next day, I started getting closer to Emma's best friend, a petulant blonde who loved showing off on social media. It only took a week for her to follow me, comment on my photos, and start sending me voice messages about how Jake had been a terrible boyfriend to Emma, too. A feast. Meanwhile, I continued pretending to be the good girl at home. And when the day of Emma's yoga workshop arrived, I made sure to go wearing the shirt from the previous night's event, the same one where she saw me with Jake. I sat in front, took photos, made stories tagging the studio and her profile, saying the class had been a transformative spiritual experience. She didn't respond to me, but I saw. She viewed everything. And Jake? More lost each day. He started getting irritated because I wasn't as available anymore. I said I had training, that I needed to sleep early, that I had a meeting with a sponsor. All true, and all without him. When he finally noticed that I no longer asked about his day, that I no longer made dinner, that I no longer cried when he left without saying where he was going, he lost it. "You've changed," he said one night, after I came back from another night run. "You're always busy, always smiling at others, but here inside the house, you've become a wall." I shrugged and said, "Maybe I'm just tired. You know how it is. Exhausted." And I left the room, but that was just the beginning. After that night, Jake began to realize that the control he thought he had over me was slipping through his fingers, and I let it slip slowly, drop by drop, like someone turning an hourglass upside down. The man who said I was exhausting was now starting to taste his own poison, and I hadn't even started to squeeze hard yet. I began making small changes at home. First, I removed our photos from the picture frames in the living room and replaced them with medals, race certificates, and trophies he had never cared about. Then I changed my alarm clock. I stopped running before he woke up and started running after he fell asleep, coming back sweaty, victorious, with the smell of the street, the wilderness. Freedom stuck to me. He would wake up in the middle of the night and ask, confused, "Are you going running now?" "Well, didn't you say I'm intense?" I replied, already tying my hair. He no longer knew what was provocation and what was routine, and that's what I wanted. I wanted him to doubt every gesture, every step, to wonder if I knew, if I had forgiven him, if I was betraying him now too, to look at my phone while I slept and find nothing, and become paranoid with the nothing. I didn't need another man. I needed him to lose himself within himself. That's when he started acting pathetically. One day, he left my favorite dish ready when I arrived, with a note, "I want to be part of your world." I laughed. Of course I laughed. It was the same man who called my life an obsession, and who was now trying to cook brown rice with dry chicken. The difference was that now he watched me eat, like someone observing a time bomb and not knowing if it's going to explode. A week later, he suggested we take a trip. Something romantic, according to him. Something just ours. I pretended to be excited. I said yes, that it would be great, that I was missing us two. He melted. He thought he was getting me back. Little did he know he was already at the end of the line. The night before the trip, I left a letter in his suitcase. Simple. Direct. With all the conversations I had printed from Emma, with all the disgusting comments he had made about me. And underneath, with very firm handwriting, I wrote, "You said I was exhausting." I just made sure to show what that really means. Have a good trip. Go alone. And instead of my presence in the car the next day, he found my absence. I was at the gym at 7 in the morning as usual. On Instagram, I posted a photo smiling with the caption, "Lighter than ever," and I made it visible to him. Just to him. But, like every emotional coward, he didn't accept the breakup with silence. He called me, sent voice messages, whined, tried to turn the tables. "You didn't need to do this. I was trying. I made mistakes. But you destroyed me. This is cruel." I listened to everything, in silence. And then I blocked him. In the following weeks, he became a shadow. He commented to mutual friends that I had broken up out of ego, that I only thought about training and fame, that I was full of myself. And me? I continued. Running, growing, appearing. I was invited to give interviews on running podcasts, received invitations to speak about discipline and female focus in sports. And then, one day, Emma reached out to me. That's right. Her. She appeared in my DMs saying, "Okay, you won. I don't know what he did to you, but congratulations. He's devastated." I viewed it and responded with a single sentence. "It wasn't about beating you. It was about freeing myself from him." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Jake was no longer the point of the story. He was just a stumble on the path, an obstacle that helped me remember who I was and how dangerous I could be when they tried to dim my shine. The most ironic part? Today he posts videos running in the park, giving fitness motivation tips, copying the style he used to mock. And me? I just watch from afar. With my name growing, my mind at peace, and a sweet taste of revenge that, this time, left no trace of guilt. As the months passed, Jake's presence became an inside joke among my followers. I never mentioned his name, never publicly exposed what he did, but those who followed me knew that some wound had been opened and completely sewn up with steel thread. I transformed myself, and this transformation wasn't silent. It was loud, visible, contagious. At the beginning of the 3rd month after the breakup, a sponsor invited me to be the ambassador for an outdoor endurance event, an entire weekend of mountain races, trails, and lectures about female overcoming. It was everything I needed, and everything Jake would never have the stomach to face. I confirmed my attendance without thinking twice. And guess who showed up? Him, with a visitor's wristband hanging from his wrist, new gym clothes, and a shameless smile on his face. He was thinner, artificially tanned, and with that typical look of someone who wants to show they're living well after the fall. But his insecurity jumped from his eyes. That same empty energy he had when he lied to me on the couch, saying he loved me and that he just needed time. Now there, in front of dozens of strong, determined women and me, the woman he tried to diminish, he looked like a lost boy in the middle of a hurricane. "Hey," he said, approaching slowly. "I just came to see how you are. I'm happy for you." "Happy for me?" I smiled. A cold, controlled smile, the kind of smile he had never seen on my face before. A smile that said, "You don't know me anymore." "That's good, Jake. It's been incredible. I think it's been the best phase of my life. You're different." I went back to being me. He remained silent, looking around as if he expected me to introduce him to someone, to include him in some conversation, to leave the door ajar for him to enter. But no, the door was locked, and I had thrown the key on top of the highest mountain I climbed alone. I saw your video on the podcast. You talked about someone who discredited you. Was it about me?" "Jake," I said, putting my hand on his shoulder. "If you need to ask, it's because you know the answer." I turned my back and entered the lecture stage. The presenter introduced me as the woman who personifies resilience and focus. And there, with microphone in hand, looking at the audience, with him hiding in the back, trying to seem discreet, I began my speech. I spoke about how many women are diminished in their relationships, about how excess energy, enthusiasm, ambition is still treated as exaggeration by weak men, about how we are called intense, crazy, exaggerated, when, in reality, we are just being ourselves in our purest state. And then I concluded, if they call you exhausting, smile. You weren't born to be a pause in anyone's life. You are the revolution. And revolutions don't ask for permission. The audience gave a standing ovation. And I didn't look at him when I left the stage. I didn't need to. I knew he had heard every word, that every sentence fell like a punch, like running uphill without training, like the exhaustion he thought I represented, but that now he truly felt. That weekend, I gained more than 20,000 followers. I was interviewed for a national sports magazine. I received proposals to launch my own fitness clothing line. And among the comments and DMs, I saw a name that caught my attention, Emma. I opened the message. It was short. I was just another excuse. Thank you for opening my eyes. I could have responded with mockery. I could have rubbed in that she was also to blame, that she laughed at me while he cheated on me with her, that she accepted crumbs while I was being destroyed. But no, I had climbed too high to waste time looking down. I just left it in the void. Because in the end, that's what they all deserved, the silence of my superiority. And Jake? He kept trying. He created a YouTube channel, started posting running videos with titles like, From Sedentary to Marathoner in 6 months. He tried to copy my style, even my motivational phrases. But nobody believed it. It was plastic, forced, and the comments were unforgiving. Trying to be like her, but lacking soul. Where's the Energizer Bunny now? Seems like exhaustion did her good and you bad. And he deleted them. Comments, videos, posts, one by one. While I only grew. Because in the end, it wasn't just revenge. It was my liberation. At that point, I no longer carried anger. And this, paradoxically, was what hurt him the most. Jake expected me to be hurt, resentful, to still care about every step he took. But I had surpassed him, not like someone who runs to escape, but like someone who simply has a different pace and leaves the other behind, gasping for breath on the shoulder of their own mediocrity. But he still hadn't understood that. A few days after the event, I started receiving messages from unknown numbers, some with vague compliments, others with questions about training, but there was something strange about the way they were written. The tone was forced, the kind of sentence that tries to seem spontaneous, but sounds too rehearsed. I blocked the first two numbers. On the third, the message came with an old photo of me and Jake, from when we went to a weekend retreat, one of the few moments he tried to seem interested in my world. The caption was pathetic. "Do you remember this? I remember everything. I miss you." I didn't respond. I just forwarded the message to my lawyer and then silenced everything. I was on another level now, and couldn't allow him to pull me back to the emotional mud that he himself had created. But Jake was insistent, like a lost dog that returns home even after being kicked. So he did what every narcissist does when they realize they've lost the war. He tried to destroy my image. Rumors started surfacing, whispers in running groups, in fitness forums, comments insinuating that I had been abusive to him, that I was controlling, that I made him insecure with my achievements. Someone even created a fake profile to tell the truth about me. But there he made his biggest mistake. He underestimated the strength of those who run by my side now. My followers, my trail partners, my workshop students, all of them started fighting back, one by one. People I had helped with tips, with motivation, with stories of overcoming. Women I saw rise from breakups, from illnesses, from abuse. They knew who I was. And more importantly, they knew how to recognize when a man was trying to dim a woman's light to hide his own shadow. The fake profile fell, the rumors dissolved into thin air, and the only thing left was him, more isolated than ever. But the universe has a sense of justice that no human revenge can plan. A few weeks later, I received an unexpected message from a producer of a physical endurance reality show that would be filmed in Chile. They were looking for authentic profiles, with stories of overcoming and positive influence. And guess who was also in the pre-selection? Jake. He had sent his material weeks before, describing himself as ex-boyfriend of a sports influencer, now overcoming his own limits. His name was on the list of pre-approved candidates. But when my name entered the conversation, everything changed. "Would you be up for participating?" asked the producer. I would, but only if he's not in the cast. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, a contained laugh. We already imagined that response. And honestly, you have more story, more connection with the audience. We'll go with you. And that's how I took away, with one sentence, the last platform he still had to try to promote himself at my expense. I went to Chile 2 weeks later, and there, the mountain welcomed me with the same cutting wind as always, but with a different warmth in my chest. I climbed to the top of one of the most difficult trails, with cameras recording, heart beating strong, eyes watery. And when I reached the summit, I looked at the horizon and let out a whisper. "You see, Jake, this here is exhausting. This here is real." I returned from filming as another person, not just stronger, but lighter. I knew he was watching. I knew he was following everything with his ego bleeding, unable to accept that he was no longer part of my narrative. At most, an irrelevant paragraph from the first chapter. The saddest part? He still tried one more time. He sent flowers, a card with shaky handwriting, and a letter. Long, dramatic, full of apologies and phrases like, "Didn't know what I had until I lost it. You taught me to be a man, and maybe there's still time." I threw it all away, because I finally understood. It wasn't about showing him who I was. It was about me never forgetting it again. My revenge wasn't loud, nor cruel. It was silent, firm, and crossed kilometers. And the most beautiful part? It was just the beginning. The flowers died 2 days later. They didn't even receive water, nor attention. They were forgotten in the corner of the balcony, like the feelings I once kept for him, dry, withered, falling around the edges of a memory that no longer made sense. The card was torn, without ceremony, and thrown in the trash along with the last bit of hope that Jake still had. He didn't realize that when a woman runs with a broken heart, she doesn't run to come back. She runs to never look back again. After the reality show in Chile, my life changed for good. Brands started approaching me directly, and not just for advertising campaigns. They wanted me to sign collections, to be their face. I ended up on conference panels alongside athletes I had admired since adolescence. Real people. People who weren't afraid of intensity. But in the middle of all this, something happened that I didn't expect. I started getting close to someone who saw me not as the influencer, nor as someone's ex, but as a woman who had gone through fire, mud, betrayal, and climbed mountains with her own legs. His name was Leo, trail running coach, known for organizing charity events, one of those who wake up at 4 a.m. just to see the sun rise on top of a mountain range. We met at one of these events. He greeted me as if he already knew me, but without idolatry. He asked me about my endurance training and commented that he had watched my lecture in silence at the back of the audience. Months ago. The way he spoke was direct but soft. No games. Without measuring or controlling me. He just listened to me. And for a long time I resisted. Not because of him, but because of me. Because I still looked in the mirror and saw deep down the pieces of that woman who once tried to fit into Jake's small world. I feared that by falling in love again, I would ruin everything. But Leo was patient. He didn't force me. He didn't invade. He just walked by my side, sometimes in silence. And little by little, I let him in. One day, during a duo run at a mountain event, we were on the last stretch, sweaty, breathless, with legs heavy as lead. I tripped on a branch and fell. I scraped my knee. It bled. And before I could get up alone, he was already by my side. Not with pity, not with drama. "Are you going to get up by yourself? Or do you want my hand?" he asked. I laughed and extended my hand. It was there that I knew I was no longer alone. Meanwhile, Jake continued trying to maintain the facade. He created forced content, recorded motivational videos that bordered on comical. In one of them, he even wore a shirt with the phrase, "Nothing stops me." A mutual follower sent me the link via DM with the caption, "What stops him is you." I laughed, but I didn't even waste time watching. It was like seeing someone trying to run on a broken treadmill. Lots of effort, zero progress. He tried one last card. He published an open letter on Medium. Dramatic title, "What I Lost When I Let Intensity Scare Me." He painted a portrait of himself as a man who fought against his own insecurity and described me as the woman who wanted too much from a world that gives too little. He said he still loved me, that he was rooting for me, that maybe one day our paths would cross again, more mature, more ready. My followers tagged me, commented, some were touched, others disgusted. Me? I was too busy opening a new line of sportswear with my name on it and training with Leo for a 100-kilometer marathon, one that I helped plan myself. Jake might have tried to write a redemption narrative, but the script was mine now. And in it, he was just the secondary character who gave up at the first obstacle. One night after a workout, Leo asked me, "Do you still think about him?" I looked at the dark sky, with stars scattered like metals in the firmament, took a deep breath and replied, "I do think about him, yes. Like someone who looks at a scar. It doesn't hurt anymore, but I remember how much it hurt." He nodded, pulled me close, and we stayed in silence. There, under the sky, I understood that there was no more space inside me for resentment. The pain had been the fuel, but now it was self-love that propelled me. And unlike Jake, this would never leave me behind. The 100-kilometer marathon would be the hardest race of my life, not because of the distance, nor the treacherous climbs, nor the cold of the dawns that cut like a razor when the body sweated. It was difficult because, for the first time, I would run not to escape from something, but to honor everything I had lived up to that point. In the days leading up to the start, I was bombarded with messages, calls, interview invitations, support from sponsors, fans, and friends I saw grow with me from the beginning. It was as if the world was looking at me and saying, "Go there, run, but this time, for you." And that's exactly what I did. On the morning of the race, the sky was still dark when I arrived at the starting location. The wet ground, the posts still lit, and the tent lanterns swaying in the wind. The silence before the start was almost sacred. Leo helped me adjust my hydration backpack, gave me a kiss on the forehead, and said, "No one will reach you, not even the past." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and started. The first 30 kilometers were like reuniting with old friends. Trails I already knew, my body responding well, absolute focus. But from 50 onwards, the head starts to betray. Every forgotten thought comes back. Every phrase said in the past echoes with a different taste. And there, on top of an isolated mountain, surrounded only by the sound of my own steps and the wind, he appeared in my mind. Jake. The phrases he said started repeating, like a bitter mantra. You're exhausting. You don't know how to relax. You're not normal. That's why I need Emma. For a second, I felt the weight of those words. Not from pain, but from anger. Anger at once believing that I needed to be less to be loved. Anger at having shrunk myself, at having explained my dreams, my goals, as if they were excuses. Anger for having looked at myself in the mirror and thought, am I going too fast? No, I wasn't going too fast. I was going at my own pace. And he just didn't have the breath to keep up with me. From kilometer 70 onwards, tears started falling without warning. It wasn't sadness. It was relief. It was like taking off an invisible backpack that I had carried for years. I looked to the sides and saw other women running, sweating, stumbling, beating themselves, each one with her story. And I was just one more, but at the same time, unique. At 90, my body was already shaking. My legs were screaming. My mind oscillated between lucidity and delirium, but something pushed me, something stronger than pain, deeper than pride. And when I reached the final stretch, I saw Leo waiting with a smile that said, "You did it." I crossed the finish line with my arms raised and my heart open. The crowd applauded, but the silence inside me was the greatest prize. The silence of peace. The silence of the woman who finally closed the cycle. The next morning, I was surprised with a viral post. A video made by one of the organization's drones, showing me running alone on a high-altitude stretch, against the wind, with a caption written by the event team. She doesn't run for medals. She runs because once they doubted her, and now no one dares to anymore. The video exploded. Brands approached. Invitations arose. And I said yes, but only to those who understood who I was completely. A few weeks later, during an event in São Paulo, I crossed paths with an unexpected figure. Emma. Thinner, with a dull look, but less arrogant than I remembered. She saw me, approached with slow steps and a silent plea in her eyes. I allowed it. I ruined everything, she said. He used me. Made me believe I was Plan B. But I was never you. I looked at her for a while, and with the serenity that only truth provides, I replied, "You didn't need to be me. You just needed to have been yourself," she cried, and I hugged her. Because when you climb mountains, you understand that carrying grudges is extra weight, and I was too light for that. On the way home, I received a message from Jake, the last one. "I saw you on TV today. You look incredible. I wonder every day what would have happened if I had supported you instead of criticizing you. But I think I already know the answer. You would have flown anyway, just not with me." This time, I didn't feel anger, nor pity, just certainty. Yes, Jake, I would have flown anyway, because what you called exhausting, the world recognized as extraordinary. And now I was free, running not to prove anything to anyone, but because finally, I was light enough to fly.